I failed 4 days in. Listen, I'm all in on 75 hard, and I'm going to come back to it. But what I want to start with is, has anyone else failed for the same reason that I failed? And I'll lay it out to you, Andy. And you tell me if you've ever heard this, okay?
I've heard it all.
Let's see then. Not for lack of discipline, I'd like to believe. I would say 2 or 3 days in, all of a sudden, my energy just plummeted, like on day 3. Mm-hmm. And then, quite honestly, my whole gastrointestinal system went haywire. I felt queasy for about 4 days running, and things ran. I'm not going to go into the gory details, but I couldn't get right, man. And I wouldn't get right until I went to see a doctor. And, of course, I was my own WebMD doctor before that. And I thought, do you have water toxicity? And this is what I started to wonder. Did I drown myself out of all the sodium in my body? Did I just zap myself? So to set the record straight, Andy, I'm not sure that's what happened. I may have just had a stomach bug. I did just travel to Mexico. Yeah. But I wonder, has anyone told you, or has anyone failed? Have you ever heard about water being the problem? Not in terms of discipline, but physically, too much water.
No. And also, a gallon of water a day is not enough for water toxicity. So, no, it's not. It's more likely that your body was going through an adjustment. It was overly stressed. Your energy levels for the first 15 or to 20 days are going to go like this. You're going to start real high. You're going to get really sore. You're going to get really tired. You're going to push through. And what ends up happening is you start to become acclimated to the pain. The program's not easy, as you figured out. You're going to deal with certain things. You're going to deal with certain obstacles. You're going to be sore. You're going to be tired. Your feet are going to hurt. That's all by design. So no, I've never heard of somebody failing from water toxicity, and a gallon of water is not enough water for someone to get water toxicity.
Well, here's why I'm glad to hear that, is because I'm ready to jump back in. And that is what I'm most nervous about. Is this going to happen again? I want to believe it was just a stomach bug. It wasn't a result of jumping into 75 hard. And I believe that, by the way. I'm going to start again. I think I'm going to start again tomorrow. And so here's what happened to me, Andy. I got a call from a buddy who said, you need to do 75 hard. I said, what's 75 hard? He said, you need to check it out. My son has done it. He has totally changed as a man. He's more focused. He gets stuff done. You need to just check it out, Will. Check it out. So I did. And what you sold me on, and I'm a sucker, we're all suckers for something, for some mantra in life. And what you sold me on was that it is a mental toughness and discipline program. That got me. That's right. I'm happy to have a physical transformation. I'm happy to get in shape. I love reading 10 pages a day, but that's not why I jumped into this. I jumped into this because I want more discipline in my life.
Yeah, listen, man, that's the exact reason the program has been created. There's plenty of ways to transform your physical self. And to be quite honest, there's easier ways to transform your physical self. There's ways for you to train and eat properly, and the things that we all know need to happen for you to make a physical transformation. There are ways to do that without making yourself extremely sore, without making yourself extremely tired. The point of this program is exactly what you said. It's to develop and to come back to over and over and over again throughout your life, a tool that can help you become more mentally disciplined, because discipline, a lot of people think it's a trait. A lot of people think it's something that people have that other people don't have. And if you're not born with it, you're kind of screwed. All right. That's what a lot of people believe about things like confidence, or things like discipline, or mental toughness, or fortitude, or the ability to persevere. They see these qualities in other people and they say, man, I really wish I had these qualities in myself. And what they don't realize, because they're not taught this, is that you have to make investments into those, just like you would make an investment into your physique or into your knowledge, right? If you want to become a smart person, you're going to put certain things into your brain. You're going to become more intelligent, and you're going to grow. And so when you think about discipline and mental toughness and the ability to push through, those are things that we have to make investments in for us to be able to make withdrawals out of when we need them. So the whole point of 75 Hard and the Live Hard program is a tool for us as humans to go back to cultivate these skills and make investments in these skills, which ultimately create massive benefits in all of the other areas of life.
So I have this theory that, Hollywood doesn't get you to cry by punching you once during a movie. Any guy can survive one gut punch. It's the yo-yo effect. Bring me back, let me settle in, then hit me again with another emotional moment. You're kind of the second or third discipline message that's resonated with me. I don't know if you ever saw the graduation speech by former SEAL Team Commander Admiral William McRaven. And that make your bed, start every day, make your bed resonated with me. So he's talking about a small task every day that sets you on the path, on the habit of discipline throughout the day. How did you pick these 5 things for 75 Hard to base around your program of discipline?
Well, that's a great question. So I am one of these people who struggles with discipline, okay? I'm one of the people who spent a lot of my life looking at other people saying, man, what is it about that guy or what is it about that girl that makes them different? What is it that makes them powerful? How couldn't they, like I was the person who couldn't go to dinner and order healthy things off the menu. I couldn't say no to a beer with the fellas. Like all these things in my life, I never understood how certain people could do it. And I didn't have that. And so this started like 20 years ago, me figuring out little ways to create power and leverage on myself to get me to accomplish what I've needed to accomplish. And so over the last 20 years, I've come up with little elements where, for example, the read 10 pages a day. That's something that I've done for 17 years now, every single day. And it's served me very well in life and business. Drinking a gallon of water is it's extremely healthy for people. Most people work in a state of perpetual dehydration. I could go on and on and on, but basically these 5 principles are the 5 principles that when combined together have produced the best results in not only myself, but also my team here. We have 400 on-site employees where I work here. And then also I've learned this through, basically experimenting. But yeah, man, it's more life experience than not. But the reality of it is that these are all mental tests on a daily basis that we want to overcome. And these things, as mundane as they seem, right? Like one of the things in the program, as you know, is to take a progress picture every single day. A lot of people are like, why is that in the program? What does that have to do with mental toughness? Well, it has a lot to do with it because just for an example, that little task, when we ignore it, right, that's a compromise. Right. So let's say there is no 75 Hard and me and Will are just doing this program. And part of it is a progress picture every day. And then Will says, man, you know what? On Monday, I forgot my progress picture. I got it on Tuesday and Wednesday, but on Monday I forgot. And then what happens is the next time, and he continues on with everything else. The next time that happens, it's not even a big deal. You're like, oh, yeah, dude, I kind of forgot to do that on Thursday and Friday. It's not a big deal. I'm still doing everything else. And then the next day, the next week comes along. It's like, yeah, I didn't follow my diet that whole day, but it's okay because, and then you justify that with some sort of what I call in the book, bitch voice excuse, right? All of us are able to negotiate with ourselves the best possible way. You know exactly what Will needs to hear for you to make a compromise and to make a trade on what you were supposed to do, what you told yourself to do, versus what you actually know needs to be done. Same for me, same for every other human. So the whole idea here is for us to tune what I call the boss voice, which is the powerful voice that we all have, which says, hey, no, this is what you said you were going to do. This is what you need to do. And then to get us to go do it.
You know what I like about what you just said is corruption is slight. Before I joined Fox News, yes. Andy, I was in sports. I know you're a sports guy. I was at ESPN for a year. I've played on teams throughout my life. And you always hear about the team where the one player cuts the corner in the cone drill or whatever it may be. And it's only by that much. It's not a true physical compromise. That player's still conditioning himself in the way that he needs to be to play that game. But what he's done is he's introduced corruption into the team. That corner gets cut 10 times over by the next guy and 20 times over by the third guy. And before you know it, you have a culture essentially of cutting corners. And by the way, Andy, I think that applies to society as well. Right now, we have a political debate about whether or not here, say in New York City, we we should persecute or prosecute small crimes, vandalism, small larceny and burglary. But small corruptions turn into big societal cultural corruptions. And you're talking about it within ourselves.
Dude, you're hitting on one of the main secrets of this program, okay? I give this program away for free. It's not something people have to buy. There's no purchase necessary. I could easily sell it. It's the most popular program in the world right now, and it probably will be for a long time. You're 100% right, dude. The reason we have this disruption in society is because of all of ours, not yours, not mine, not this race or these people or that or the liberals or anything. All of us as Americans have started to compromise on our own values and our own ethics and what we think is acceptable. And so what happens is the kids coming up behind us, they see us making bad decisions. They see us justifying our weakness. They see us cutting corners. And what that does is it raises up a generation behind us that thinks that's normal and that's okay. And so what's really important, and what I talk about a lot on my podcast, is how important it is. Like, a lot of people right now, as you know, are worried about where the world's going and what's happening and how are we going to change it. And my answer to that is for us to take control of our own selves, to have individual responsibility, to set a standard within our households and within our lives that our friends see, that our neighbors see, that our enemies see, everybody sees, right? And what that does is that naturally elevates everybody in our little bitty communities. Right now, a lot of people feel irrelevant because they don't have 2 million followers on whatever social media platform they happen to use. They think, well, my voice doesn't matter, but your voice does matter. Your voice is extremely important and impactful, and your actions are even more impactful, because when you take care of developing the best possible you, other people learn how to do the same, and that is a noble thing. That's a noble thing that will naturally, if we could get everybody in the world, and look, this program's free. I'm not selling it. If you got everybody in the world to raise their standards and commit to holding those standards, how much better will the world be?
Well, what I like about what you're saying as well is it's become a cliche, and it's a cliche used by, honestly, both sides of the aisle to use your voice. Mm-hmm. But what 75 Hard to me suggest is use your action, use your habit, use yourself and your life as the model, as the example, as the way to make the world a better place. I see on your website, by the way, I see on this podcast you chugging water throughout the podcast, so I can see you're well on your way to a gallon. No, but I see on your podcast that you love America. You make a point of saying, I am a patriotic American, and you talked about our values being corrupted. What American values are you most concerned about being corrupted?
I really think the idea of personal achievement and excellence is almost starting. We're starting to favor mediocrity and being like everyone else and accepting everyone else for what they are, instead of saying, no, you have the potential to create this amazing life, and we have the freedom and the soil that other people have cultivated and fertilized and created for you to maximize your own full potential. And when we don't do that, what we're doing is setting a lesser example for everybody else, like we just spoke about. So my main concern in society isn't really like the issues, right? It's our personal standards as humans, what we're willing to tolerate for ourselves, what example we're willing to set, and understanding that all of us do have an obligation to give back to America, not whether it be through service or whether it be through how we live our lives, right? Like, I believe how we live our lives is the greatest honor that we could honor America with. My dad's father was killed at the end of World War II, shortly after D-Day. My dad never met his dad. Okay. My dad was raised by another man who was a great father to him, but my dad never met his dad ever. And I often think about that. I think about, okay, was that sacrifice worth it? And so for me, having a direct lineage from someone who paid that price, I personally feel obligated to make my life matter as much as I can. And I've seen a lot of good come from that. And so I think the American excellence quality of this country is where we really need. That's where we can, something that we can all control. It's something that cannot be canceled. It's something that no one can come take from you. And if we all just elevated our personal standards, I think we could revitalize this American greatness value that you and I have known to be most of our lives.
It can't be canceled, but I do believe, Andy, that it can be corrupted. So, and I'm not going to put words into your mouth, but I am a firm believer, a faithful believer in the idea of American exceptionalism. But that doesn't mean that we are born better than other people who are born in other nations. And I think so many people hear that. They think, oh, you Americans think you're inherently better than others. No, but I do think we were granted with privilege a certain outlook on life, a country that at one time embodied certain principles that were most certainly exceptional. And it was our job, it remains our job, to live up to those exceptional standards or exceed those exceptional standards. Sure. And again, not to put words into your mouth, but what I worry about, and this ties in somewhat to the idea of 75 hard, I think to some degree, is we've become a society so averse to judgment that we want to just accept everyone exactly as they choose to be. And accepting someone for all of their flaws is not always the most loving act. In other words, we look at, for example, obesity. Obesity is being hailed as beauty today. It's not beauty. In fact, it is unhealthy, and it is unhealthy for you as an individual and for the United States as a society. And that's where I think we can corrupt. And the corruption comes in the form of sort of a comfortable couch, sinking into, as you pointed out, mediocrity. That's how we corrupt American exceptionalism.
1,000%. I agree with everything you just said. Listen, there's people all over the world that do this program. If you're in Australia or you're in Canada or you're in Europe or you're in Asia, your job still, what I just said about America, it goes for you as well if you want a free society where you are. And in fact, free, independent, strong, mentally tough people are hard to convince to take the shit deal. Sorry for the language, but let's just be completely honest.
I'm surprised it's honestly the first time you've cursed in this podcast.
I don't know what your rules are.
They'll probably beep you, so it's fine.
Yeah. But look, it's no secret that the powers that be, I'm not going to sound like a conspiracy guy, which a lot of people think I am, but it's no secret that what is being dictated is a cultural weapon against our country, okay? They want people to feel okay with where they are, not for the sake of acceptance, but for the sake of control. That's what's been going on for the last 20 years. And a lot of people don't see it that way, but that's exactly how I see it. And I also agree with you. You know, when you see, I've been overweight, okay? I was 350 pounds, and I've been that heavy a couple times in my life. And there's nothing you can say to me, nobody can say to me, that will make me believe that I just wasn't accepting myself and I was truly, like, look, dude, I know what it's like to be like that. It's not fun. You can't buy clothes. You don't go to social events. You're not living your life to your fullest. And anybody who says otherwise, it's usually not the people who are overweight. It's usually the people around them telling them that. And the truth of the matter is, what you said is the truth. True kindness, true care, true empathy comes from telling people the truth and then helping them overcome whatever that is. Not just saying, hey, you know what, Will, I love you, bro. You're one of my best friends. But and I love you exactly how you are when I know that you're wrecking your life in all these other ways. That's not true love.
No, I agree with that. I don't think it's conspiratorial to assume that the general public has been put under the spell of control. I think it's been quite obvious over the last 2 years. And you're right, it's been a much longer project than simply 2 years. Why do you think that is? I mean, I think COVID, by the way, and COVID protocols and protecting people from any type of risk has been the obvious exposure of that control. But it's not limited to COVID. And I just wonder, as you look at it, why? Why do you think there's such an attempt to control the public?
Well, I think that it benefits I think there's class warfare going on, and I think a lot of the things that's going on in society that's put down through various sources like Hollywood, the media, all these things to get people to fight each other is really distraction for the very, very elite at the top to take more money, more control, more power over society, which, that hurts all of us, okay? So I think the what's really going on here in America is that, all these social narratives are manufactured. And by the way, this isn't the first time this has been attempted in history. It's been attempted before, okay? But what we're trying to do right now what they're trying to do right now is get people into a state of no national identity, nothing to fight for, nothing to resist, nothing to stand up for, nothing matters. Okay, and this is, this is the truth. Okay, if you can get people to say a man is a woman and a woman is a man, what can you not get them to say? All right, and if you can get them to say that, you can get them to not care about their own national identity. And if they don't care about their own national identity, we know what happens after that. It's easy for people to come in and take what we have. And people in America have become, I think, ignorant to the fact that we have such a beautiful country and such a resourceful country that other people in the world aren't these politically correct, nice people that want to come over and hold hands and ring around the rosy and celebrate. Like, dude, there's people out there that want to take our shit. Okay. So we have to be real about what it is that's going on. And I think that getting people to accept mediocrity, getting people to accept lower income, getting people to accept a lower quality of life is all about getting them dependent on our government system, pushing them further into technology, aka the metaverse and all these other things, and making them care less about actually going out in real life and creating anything for themselves. And I think that's a big problem for us moving forward. I actually think it's the biggest problem. I think it's the biggest thing no one talks about is how much more technology are we going to adopt? How much more technology are we going to allow to take away from our actual life experience? And if it's up to them, they want us wearing these goggles 24/7, getting a paycheck from the government and not worrying about anything else. And I believe that's
trading
what's
away
going
a
on.
real life for a virtual life. But I want to push you on this. It's something I've thought a lot about. You used the word they several times in that explanation. And I happen to agree with you that there is essentially a class warfare taking place in the United States of America, the elite versus the common man. But look, I have been successful in life. Everything is on a relative scale. You are very successful. You just pointed out there's 400 people working for you there in Missouri. You're a successful entrepreneur. What makes one elite? Are you one of the elites? You're certainly one of the wealthy. What makes someone elite?
Yeah, I think that, people, I think the narrative is designed to make people look at people like myself or people like you and say it's them. When in reality, like, dude, my company's worth $3 or $4 billion right now, and I'm still a speck on the massive radar of some of the wealth of some of these people. Okay, so no, I don't consider myself one of the elite. I grew up lower middle class, just like everybody else. I worked, I built this company. I started it with $12,000. Okay, like I am an example of what's possible in this country, which is why I care so much about our freedoms being preserved, because I realize that if people don't preserve the freedoms that we have, that the next generation of young men and women that aspire to be successful will not be able to do that. And so when it comes to they, without naming specific names, I could give you a specific list that I think, but it would be long and it would probably take the rest of the show. But the reality of it is that these people, we have to look at people who are pushing the certain social narratives that are not conducive to healthy American people. And I think that comes down to, a lot of the people who are in charge of what media narratives are put out. I think it has to do with a lot of people who are in charge of the censorship that's happening on virtually every platform out there right now. Dude, look, the truth is, Will, and I know exactly who's doing it. And we know that there's a big corporate problem in America where very, very wealthy people make the decisions for literally everybody else. And the idea of democracy in this country has started to become, dude, do we really believe in the voting system anymore? Or how is that going to work? And these are all things that have happened in other countries before, right before their fall. So, I think the truth of it is, man, I don't know what the solution is going to be, but I know that most Americans are not with.
Well, I think you're hovering over the solution. I think you're hovering over it. Yeah. I think ultimately it's about individualism, individual responsibility, individual ownership. Yes. I think a lot of what you are putting together in the way that you are thinking about this actually is the deliverance. Thinking about community, going on from the individual to the community. I think those are the deliverance from this control out of mediocrity back into American exceptionalism. Hey, speaking of that, hey, what is the Andy Frisella entrepreneurial story? I know you started a supplement company business. I know you and I spoke the other day, you've got franchisees in town. Tell me the Andy Frisella entrepreneurial story.
I'll give you the short version. I was always a kid who went door to door. Like I would sell baseball cards and we had lemonade stand. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I was never a good student. I was probably a C student, maybe a D student, virtually all through school. When I was 19, my business partner and I started a supplement store with $12,000. Just like GNC, but with like 1/10 the product. Like every single person that came into our store asked us, hey, are you guys getting ready to go out of business? I never knew what that meant because I was proud of the store, but now I get why they asked me that. And Chris and I, we lived in that store on and off for the first couple years. We got to a point where we were able to open a second store after our first 5.5 years in business. 10 years in, we had 11 or 12 stores, and we started First Form, which is our nutritional supplement brand. That was started in 2009. And that started again with no money. It started with the money that we had created from the stores. My first 2 years in business, or my first 3 years in business, I made $0. The next 7 years, I made $695 a month. That was what I lived on for 10 years. I lived on 58 grand total for the first 10 years I was in business, legitimately. And that's what you can do when you're free here in America. You can't do that other places. Okay. We rolled it into this company called First Form, which is a nutritional manufacturing company. We make finished products goods. And now here we are. What year is it? 2022. And we're doing really well. We employ 400 people on site. We have, I think 13 or 14,000 independent reps across the globe. It's not MLM. It's just independent representation. And then, I have a number of other companies that I run as well, but that's basically it, man. And there's nothing special about me. I'm not an exceptionally smart person. I'm just smart enough not to make the same mistake twice.
Hey, I want to come back to 75 Hard, but before we leave these sort of solving the world's problems conversations, I follow you on social media. Mm-hmm. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I see you in front of me right now. I mean, masculinity is a big part of Andy Frisella. Mm-hmm. I mean, you lift, you speak with authority. You are projecting as much testosterone as possible most of the time. What I'm curious about, though, is also your thoughts on the role of masculinity in what's happening in America today and in our culture. Because I happen to think that the loss of masculinity, and it doesn't always mean, by the way, being able to lift as much as Andy Frisella. It doesn't mean spending time in the weight room. It doesn't even mean speaking. You don't have to speak the way that Andy Frisella speaks. I think
you don't speak at all.
It's about what's here and the steel rod that exists on your moral compass inside of you. And that, to me, is a major problem in the United States of America.
I agree with you 100%, Will. Look, a lot of people have the wrong idea about masculinity because it's been branded as toxic, right? The toxic masculinity is masculinity in general for the people who use that term. A lot of people have, and now I see the pendulum swinging back to masculinity, but a lot of people don't understand what it is, right? They think it's like growing a beard, or lifting weights and having muscles and, eating raw eggs and like all this weird stuff that we see on the internet. And that's not it at all. I understand what you're saying, but the way I look is just to happen to be it's by chance. Masculinity to me means more about what you just said, which is really understanding your own core values, having the backbone to stand on those core values no matter what, and leading and understanding that your job as a masculine man is to hold other men in your circle to those standards and to help teach them what it means or what you think it means to be a man. And, society, if we look at all the advertising and all the things that they show to be men, they do not include masculine men in that message at all anymore. And so a lot of young men, a lot of young boys are very confused on what it is they need to do to operate within the hierarchy of humanity. And the truth of the matter is no matter how many ads they make, or no matter how many commercials they run, or no matter how many posters they put up of what their version of men should be, the role of a masculine man is always going to be there. It's primal. It's in our DNA. It's in a female's DNA. And it's something that we all have to understand what we're actually talking about. I know plenty of very masculine men that you would look at and think, oh, that guy's just he's just a normal guy. He probably sits behind a computer all day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, the idea of masculinity, I think, has been corrupted on both sides. I think there's a lot of people who are profiting off of the idea of becoming masculine men who are teaching people, to grow a beard. Like, it's like, come on, man, that's not real masculinity. Real masculinity is knowing who you are, putting in the work to yourself, becoming the best of who you are, understanding what your core values are as a human, and being willing to stand for those things and voice those things, and then, take care of people around you. That's and maybe I'm missing a couple things.
Men are leaders, men are protectors, men are providers.
And it's needed. It's needed.
And I think men are principled. And you're exactly right. It's needed. Yeah. Okay, so 75 hard. You've said you've seen people fail in every fashion except for water toxicity. So why or how do most people fail out of 75 hard?
Most people fail. So one of the shirts that I wear all the time, it says zero compromise on it. Most people fail because they've conditioned themselves to compromise on everything. And they have to understand that that's what we're trying to change about you. Okay? We want you to be someone who can make decisions and stand on them and act on them no matter what the outside circumstances of the world happen to be at this point in time. So, most of the time when people fail, it's because they are having problems overcoming the years and years and years and years of their mental voice compromising for them. Because like we talked about earlier, we know exactly what to say to each other or to ourselves to get us to give us a break, right? Oh man, you really worked hard all day. You deserve that pizza tonight. Like, tomorrow you'll get after it twice as hard. We all know how to say those things. And so what we have to do is we have to build up the character inside of us that is actually the boss voice, the voice that says, no, you said you were going to do this. Now it's important that you stick to that, so that we can look ourselves in the mirror at the end of the day and be like, hey, look, I'm proud of you, dude. I'm proud of that person in the mirror. And so the compromising is really the biggest problem. There's nothing hard about 75 hard other than the first 20 days, okay? The rest of it's mental. We're talking about very basic things. We're not talking about going out and working out like a madman when you're not. We're talking about a scalable program where you can do a walk to start. Everybody can walk twice a day for 45 minutes for the most part. And if you can't walk, I've had people that do arm exercises, or they do things that they can't do, or that would be activity, right? So I think the biggest thing that people have to work on, man, is just recognizing when that voice creeps into their head, hearing it, and then stifling it down to where we don't listen to it. We stay on course.
Is the life of Andy Frisella a rolling 75 hard? Do you do this stuff, or do you do the program and then take time off?
For me, man, so what I do the program every year. There's a whole Live Hard program, which is a year-long program. So it's 75 days, and then it's 3 phases of 30-day stints. Okay. And the reason I do it every year is because discipline is a perishable skill, even for someone who's aware of it, right? It's even for me, who's completely aware of what their voices are saying inside. I understand that this is a perishable skill. So what I look to do, because of all the responsibility that I have in my life, is I want to be as mentally sharp and as mentally disciplined as I can. So I do the whole program once a year. I actually failed the whole program last year. So I failed it on phase 3. I had to have a shoulder surgery. It was out of my control. It is what it is. And looking back, I honestly think I could have got through it. But failures happen. So I start back up this year and I get it again. But it's not all the time. But my life has become, I would say 80% of the time, I'm doing at least the 75 hard tasks.
So here's why I asked you that. So when I tell people about 75 hard, people that hadn't heard of it, one of the things they say to me is, why do you have to do it that way? It's so arbitrary. Why do I have to separate my 2 workouts? Why can't I just work out for an hour and a half. And I know Andy Frisella's answer to that. I know because it's supposed to be hard. You're supposed to figure out your schedule so that you put into place the discipline. But I also hear, and then in response to that, well, it's not sustainable, Will. Why don't you find something and do something that is sustainable? I want to tell you my answer before I hear your answer to that. My answer has been, hey, if I keep half of the habits that I build up in 75 hard, if I keep half of them at the end of 75 days, I'll be better off than I was when I started. If I keep a third, if I keep 25% of the habits I build up over the next 75 days, I'll be better than I was when I started. That's been my outlook as to whether or not it's sustainable. I'm curious what your answer is to whether or not it's sustainable.
When it comes to sustainability, there's a couple things I'll say about that. Number one, what kind of lifestyle were you sustaining before that? Okay. Number two, when you get done with 75 days, you are going to have the ability to stick to things that you didn't have before, which means if you adjust your program onto something that you seem as sustainable, which what you're going to find out after 75 days is actually this program is very sustainable because it's very basic. So let's say you switch after 75 days. The biggest problem with most programs is not the program, it's the adherence to the program. And so what you've done over the 75 days is you fine-tuned your ability to adhere to anything else you choose to do. Now, 75 days is not intended for you to be your whole life, but it's going to give you skills that are going to allow you to adhere to other things past that. And that's what I would say to people who say, oh, it's not sustainable. Most of the people that say that, bro, they've been living pretty easily.
Well, also, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the program is about. I think, to your point, it's
Absolutely.
not about the physical transformation or the diet necessarily. It's about practicing discipline. It's about practicing those habits. All right, I want to ask you about this finally. One of the books I chose, I don't know where you are on this issue, Andy, I'll be real with you, and the audience knows this. I've been, over time, someone in pursuit of being a better person. And I mean that in every way, including my faith. So I chose a couple different books, and I know you got to read one start to finish, and at 10 pages a day, that's going to be no problem. But I'll be real with you. I've also I've invested in reading more Tim Keller, more books about faith. And one of the things that I saw when I was reading online about growing your soul in addition to your discipline and your habit and your physical transformation as well is that it seemed like there was some addendums to 75 hard, some additional things that you could add. Somebody at my gym actually told me about it, like the 7 random acts of kindness in addition to it. I don't know if that's coming from you. I don't know if that's officially part of the program, but I was very intrigued by that idea.
Yeah, so that's phase 3 of the program. So how it works is it's called Live Hard. That's the whole program. I have the books coming out this year. It's actually really soon. So the book is called Live Hard, the book on mental toughness. And what it does is it's got 75 hard, and then there's phase 1, 2, and 3, which are each 30 days. All right. So in phase 1, it's 75 hard plus a couple tasks. Then there's a 30-day mandatory break, meaning you can do 75 hard and then the first phase back to back. You cannot do phase 1 and 2 back to back. And the reason for that is you have to have a mandatory 30-day break, because what I want people to realize, and what they do realize, is that their discipline will diminish in that short of a time. So then when they start back up with phase 2, it's actually I think that's the hardest part of the Live Hard program. After that 30-day break, starting back up, and you could take 3 or 4 months off between phase 1 and phase 2. 30 days just the minimum. And then phase 2 is the basic 75 hard regular tasks again for 30 days. And then there's phase 3, which is to be done the last 30 days of your year leading up to your anniversary of starting 75 hard. And in phase 3, there's a couple new tasks in there that are designed to elevate certain skills inside you besides just discipline, okay? And one of them is a random act of kindness every single day. So that's actually in the program. I'm trying to make people better, bro. That's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get our society to a place where we are all confident, we are all strong, we are all mentally disciplined, and people can be in control of their external circumstances versus being forced into this mediocrity by the advertising or whatever outside elements we have going on. But then in phase 3, there's also you have to talk to random strangers. Okay, a lot of what people have to have struggles with right now, because technology is so strong, their interpersonal communication skills have gotten very weak. And I noticed this because when we bring people into our companies who are 17, 18, 19 years old, they lack the ability to shake hands and look someone in the eye and say, hey, nice to meet you. And so and by the way, this is how I overcame that. I'm a very introverted person. I prefer to be alone than with other people. And how I overcame my own propensity to be introvert is by actually going to the grocery store, making up this game that I played, which was I had to go talk to a random stranger, 3 random strangers inside the grocery store before I left, and have a real conversation. Now, I'm not talking about, get into their life story, but I am talking about more than just say, hey, how you doing? And then say that back. So maybe you give them a compliment on their shoes. Maybe you help them or talk to them about however it is, a short conversation. And I did that for years. And that's where I developed my abilities, because I wasn't naturally someone who could go out and say, hey, nice to meet you. It's just something that I didn't have inside me. And so really the ultimate idea here is to get people to understand that a lot of these things that they see as traits in other people that they admire are actually skills that they can develop themselves if they're willing to get uncomfortable.
It's funny you say that. My wife is inherently introverted. I think in modern day America, we pathologize so much social anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm not saying those don't exist, but to clinicalize everybody's problems as quickly as possible absolves responsibility, but it also robs you of the ability to get better. My wife and I bought newspapers when we were in our early 20s and early in our marriage. When I say buy newspapers, we were entrepreneurial. We owned small town weekly newspapers in Texas. I'm sure there's plenty of those in Missouri. And she was the sales rep, and she was this introvert, and it was trial by fire. You want to have your personality forced to come out of you. Go try to sell a car dealer, because they're not, by the way, the softest personalities out there. But man, it taught her the skills of assertiveness, of confidence, of going out there and being herself. This conversation's gone all over the place, but I actually think it's actually been in one place. I think whether or not we're talking about the country or us as individuals, I think you're hovering over the target, Andy. I truly do. I don't think you changed anything without changing yourself. And I do believe, although I haven't accomplished it yet, and I'm going to restart it, I do believe that if people can...
When are you
How about
restarting?
this? I will restart tomorrow. Yeah?
I'll start with you. I'll restart with you. I'm like 20 days in right now. So
you're going to rewind it 20 days? Oh, Andy,
yep.
now I can't fail.
All right. I'll give you my cell phone number, and I'm going to text you, and we're going to get this shit done together.
We do that tomorrow. We start tomorrow. All right, last thing. Do you have any tips before I get started? Besides the Andy Frisella accountability text, do you have any tips before I get started?
The biggest thing, man, is to remember why you're doing it, okay? You're going to get sore. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to feel like going out and having a dinner with your friends. You're going to want to quit this program. That's the point. And so what I would encourage you to realize is that every single time you want to quit and you don't quit, you just got stronger. You got a lot stronger. And so I want you to think about that when you're thinking about how sore you are or how uncomfortable you are, because dude, as you know, you're going to get sore. The first 20 days are the hardest in my opinion. And then days 50 through 59. Those days are hard just because it's like August, right? Like you're like, oh man, the dog days are here. I get it, but I don't get it, and I haven't finished, and I still got 20 days left, and you start to feel it. But that's neither here nor there. We got to get there first. So the first 20 days are really physically hard or really mentally hard. Don't quit, man. Don't quit no matter what. The biggest thing that keeps people from accomplishing their dreams, no matter what they are, is their ability to understand that every single time they quit on something, they're getting closer to quitting on their dreams. Whether that be a cookie, whether that be cutting out 2 minutes of your cardio, whether that be, missing the progress picture. Every single time we compromise on what we told ourselves to do, we are getting weaker and we are getting less likely to succeed and more likely to fail. I'll tell you what I do, Will, is when I get really, because this stuff's hard for me too. It's not easy. Like people think, oh, well, you've done it so many times. It's easy. No, it's not. It's really, really hard for me. And one of the things that I tell myself is that, dude, if I quit, if I fail this, I'm failing my entire team. I'm failing my entire company. I'm failing my entire future. And I realize, when I think about it like that, it's a lot easier to get up and just do what needs to be done.
And I'll fail Andy Frisella. So if we're doing it together. All right, man. This has been awesome. Awesome to get to know you and talking to you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the time today.